As a human, you are the greatest technology. We know about technology and we rely on that, but really we should rely heavily on our human technology. It is my sense that the remote viewing program on some level is indeed still going on within our government. You're not supposed to use PSYOP if you're an Army specialist in that field. You're not supposed to use that on Americans and on domestic soil. Quite often, these people get out and become domestic civilians working in these companies, and they use those techniques, tactics, and procedures as a means to an end. And that's where it kind of gets kind of spooky and scary and so on and so forth. It's a invite for people to recognize that they are indeed capable of being influenced and manipulated with PSYOP, which is the greatest tool that they have in defeating PSYOP, is your ability to say that I'm susceptible. We are still susceptible. So we always have to keep moving and keep thinking deeply about the things that we're involved and engaged in, because at any moment, one of those little PSYOP techniques can slip through.
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. Welcome everyone to Higher Journeys. I am your host, Alexis Brooks. Always glad to be back with you and always delighted to present new guests to the platform. Today is no exception. We've got a gentleman who I can now call a friend, Hakim Isler. It's been such a pleasure to get to know this man, and you'll know exactly why once we get into this discussion. First of all, welcome to you, sir. It's been a long time coming. We're finally going to do it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And this is going to be an exciting conversation. We've had multiple exciting conversations. So to now be
Indeed.
able to record one and share it with the world, I'm really elated to know that that's happening.
Ditto. Absolutely. Well, as they say, we should begin at the beginning. I know you've been doing the circuit. You've been out there a little bit. So chances are people are getting to know who you are. But for those that don't, Hakim, I think we should. I don't do this too often. And your resume reads like a book, a volume, of course, at your young age.
Yeah, thank
But
you.
I think because it's so unique and so diverse, and will speak to our audience, I'd like you to give us a little bit of a background. And before you even do, just so you know, y'all, this gentleman is a former Psy-Operative for the military. Now, we're not going to talk about this a lot, but I know this is going to pique some interest in some people, and we want to get into that. So maybe we start with that and then fold in all of the other amazing skills you've been able to acquire over the years. I'll let you go for it.
Yeah, just to add some comedy to it, probably the best thing I've ever heard that just made me laugh hysterically was this guy was introducing me once and he said, "You would have to cut down a forest to have enough paper to write down what this guy's done." And I was like, "That's pretty cool. I don't think you have
I
to cut
love it.
down a forest, but okay." um, to jump into the PSYOP, one of the interesting things happened was I went to Ohio to train in this ninja martial arts. And I was doing I wanted to be a bodyguard because my teacher was the bodyguard for the Dalai Lama at one point.
Hmm.
And at one of his courses, I met this guy named Michael. And Michael was in the army. And I had already decided I was going to go in the army. 9/11 had happened, and I knew I had these skills, and I wanted to provide those skills to my country in service of this greater good. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. And I was gonna be special forces. And I met this guy, Michael, and I told him, oh, I was gonna go. Oh, you
Oh,
should change it to this thing called PSYOP. And I said, I don't know what that is. And he said, well, when you go in as special forces, you could get injured and going through the pipeline, and then you go to the needs of the army because you don't have a backup, job chosen. And so I was like, oh, he was like, but if you go in as PSYOP, you're going to get much of the same training. You're going to meet all of the same people. You all go to language school together, all this stuff, because it also is special operations forces. Then you can try out for the specialty of special forces. And if you get injured or can't make it or something happens, then you just go back to PSYOP and you stay in the community. He was like, so I think that would be a better option. And besides, the ninja of old were psychological operations or operatives. And so you'll kind of be in that same, you'll kind of be like going back to your roots per se. And I was like, that sounds really cool. Let's go. So that's how I joined the army as PSYOP, and really had a great time in it, with some exceptions. There were some pretty um, difficult awakenings during that process, but um, I would say that's just to answer your question. That's how I got started in that field.
Mhm. I have to make mention, Hakeem, of, in certain communities, not the least of which are conspiratorial communities, the term psyop is often used within the context of sort of um, an event that's taken place with a targeted outcome. It has kind of a negative connotation. So, just for the record, if you could maybe touch on that, is there any even tangential relationship, excuse me, with how psyops are represented from a military perspective and how they may be, if it even exists in the lay public? How do they relate, or how are they dissimilar? Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So PSYOP, the actual breakdown of what it means is to persuade, change, and influence the hearts and minds of a foreign target audience. So the idea, that keyword foreign. We're not supposed to use PSYOP in a U.S. capacity on domestic soil. However, there have been times, only in certain cases, where, let's say, martial law or some of these things, like when we had Hurricane Katrina. Normally, we would switch our name during that phase. So in Hurricane Katrina, you had information operations, right? IO. So instead of PSYOP, right? So we switched our name, and then at one point in time, you had like kind of this miso thing going on. Now, where this gets muddied is that we're not supposed to use our training, PSYOP training, on American population. But what ends up happening quite often is people who are in this field will get out of the army and then they go into media companies, marketing companies, political strategy companies, and so of course, when we can't expect these folks to erase who they are and what they've learned over these years. As a matter of fact, they're probably getting the job because they have that background.
Hmm.
So even though you're not supposed to use PSYOP if you're an army specialist in that field, you're not supposed to use that on Americans and on domestic soil. Quite often, these people get out and become domestic civilians working in these companies, and they use those techniques, tactics, and procedures as a means to an end. And that's where it kind of gets kind of spooky and scary, and so on and so forth. And if we actually look where PSYOP, the main tenets of PSYOP, was developed, there's a gentleman by the name of Bernays who came out with these strategies, and he
Yes,
was like the father of a lot of the modern marketing that we have, and he
absolutely.
helped develop a lot of the curriculum. So we see a lot of that overlap there too. So then you have marketing companies who came up, who are people who've gone to marketing schools and they've learned about Bernays. But then we also in the army we're learning about him, as well as several other people, and using those techniques as our own techniques to kind of influence societies abroad. So that's where you see this connection
Wow.
in our modern day. Um, so that gives you, I hope, a good overlay of where
Absolutely.
we are.
I'm glad you brought up Edward Bernays. Of course, he is the father of modern propaganda and wrote the book by the same name, Propaganda, and was also, I believe, the nephew of Sigmund Freud.
He
So
was, yeah.
there's been a lot of talk within that context. So thank you for that. That's really obviously, and particularly with the audience that we tend to reach. Although I wouldn't call them necessarily conspiracy heads, they're probably more acutely aware of that whole scene than the average person that isn't. So I definitely thought it was worth bringing up. We don't want to get stuck on that. I think this actually could be a good segue, Hakeem, to all the other the wonderful things, the positive things that are happening
Yeah.
with these incredible abilities that you and others like you have brought to the table, and it's growing exponentially. We're talking about remote viewing. I want to get
Mm.
into that. You are well trained in that area. For how long? Let's talk about that for a little bit. Your remote viewing background. Hey everyone. Just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this content and you want more, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. This tells YouTube you want to see more higher journeys, and that helps spread the word. It's one of the best ways you can support our work. Thanks so much. Now, Let's get back to the show.
I want to say I've been doing remote viewing or really engrossed in it probably for 6 years, I believe.
Mhm.
So that sounds about right. I started before then with my ninjitsu training because my teacher actually worked with Del Graff and we would go over some things that he learned through that. But then also in our ninja practice from of old, we had these 9 kujis or these 9 abilities, and then one of those abilities is to see things in another place and time. So we had meditations built around that and stuff like that. But when it came down to who I started, when I started training with someone who was actually in like military remote viewing program and people around him, that happened about 6 years ago, and that was Paul Smith, and that was my
Yes.
first teacher. And then I grew from Paul to at my first class was this guy Tom McNair, who ended up being one of Ingo's most successful students and longtime friends,
Mm.
who also brought Paul into the remote viewing program. So I trained with him a little bit. Then I also trained with Bill Ray, who I also ran it. And then I went to the Monroe Institute, trained with Joe McMonagle in both
Oh,
of his classes, and did that. Trained with Angela Thompson Smith, who actually was the sister-in-law of Paul Smith, who went through IRVA and had her own courses and curriculums. So I've been around. I've worked with Lynn Buchanan on his online course a little bit. Pam Coronado as well.
all the
Um,
names. Yeah,
yeah, all the names. So
all the
I've
names.
just I've just kind of when I get involved in something, I'm very much unlike this time is a very interesting time, because we have this thing where people have real downloads. This really happens, and the ancients talked about it as well. But we live in this time where it's kind of like you could meet a person who just says, "I got all of the knowledge I needed from source," right? And then I don't need anybody else, and I'm a believer in that to a certain degree, but I'm also a believer in there is this gross, subtle, and causal plane. And so, yes, I can get things from the causal plane or from the subtle plane, but also I am a gross body. So I should also be connected with people who are deeply involved in this on those levels as well. And so for me, the training is very important to have good mentors because even the ancients say in their different teachings, I've been studying yoga for a long time, that having a mentor to help guide you through these pitfalls and the things that happen based on ego. And when you're out there alone in the wind, that could be a very scary place. There's a reason why there's only but so many sages that have walked
Mm.
whether it be a female sage or a male sage, that not it wasn't millions of sages. It's probably like hundreds in the course of, because it's very special individuals who do get full on downloads who change the course of history. And then there are others of us who get some gleams, some moments of inspiration where we have that, but it's still beneficial for us to be grounded and
Mhm.
connected and be able to talk to mentors who can help guide us through certain things, people who have been there before us.
No
And so
question.
I say all that to say that that's why I've trained with so many people. It wasn't that I needed to train with all of those people. It was because I wanted to have a good, well-rounded understanding of where remote viewing came from.
Mhm.
And the best way to do that is find people who are deeply rooted in it and spend time with them through mentorship, and then really get an understanding of how I personally want to move forward in the world.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Such wisdom you
So
have
thank you.
in approaching these very otherwise elusive areas. I want to stay with the remote viewing for a bit, Hakeem,
Mhm.
because there's so much to it. Before we go any further, I want to tell you where y'all were. This is leading, not just leading up to. We're going to be folding in, and why I wanted to have Hakeem on. He has put together what I would call one of the most unique, bigger than an event. It's bigger than an event. It's going to be a movement. It's a culture called the Psy Games. We're going to get into that a bit more because it really is all about, and you just made some points that will lead us to why having something called the Psy Games right now is so important. But let's put that on the back burner for a little bit. We'll be folding it into the conversation because it involves all of you watching out there, why Hakeem has put this together. But going briefly back to remote viewing, what would you say? Because I would say that it's a term that is fairly well known, not with the average, lay person that doesn't look at these things, but within our community, which is growing and growing, people know what that is. What would you say among those people that just know it on a cursory level would be the biggest misconception of remote viewing?
So the biggest misconception of remote viewing, based on my perception, is that people tend to lump it in with like clairvoyance, or they think that there's this clear seeing. And according to Paul and Ingo, from what I understand, learning from these guys, learning from Paul, who learned directly from Ingo,
Mm,
is that at one point it was like we should really call it remote perception because you perceive things from the target more than you actually see things from the target. And so viewing implies I see what's happening. And
mhm,
if you are seeing what's happening, which is a very real thing too, it's not that that's wrong. It's just that if we were to actually stick to terms, then you are clairvoyant, which there are people who are clairvoyant, one being yourself, I'm sure. And so people who can see, oh, I see a man walking here. Clearly, I see this guy, right? And then sometimes you have just this perception of there's a
mm,
person there who I perceive, I feel like they have blue on. I feel like they're wearing this thing. And so that's kind of the difference that happens. Now, because we're playing in the field of consciousness, could you have a moment where you're really doing remote viewing, but at one point in that remote viewing, you clearly see something? Yeah, absolutely. You can have that too. But if the majority of the time you're out there in the field or in the matrix, they might say, and you're seeing everything that's happening, you're probably more clairvoyant than you are remote viewing. And so that's based on where it came from and what it was supposed to mean. That's where it's meant. Now it's kind of become a bunch of stuff,
absolutely. Yeah.
where people link in these different things. And so words are important if people want that. But if nobody's hurting, I'm also of the mind if you're not hurting anybody, you're a positive person and you choose to call it remote viewing, yet you're doing clairvoyance, or you choose to call it clairvoyance, yet you're doing remote viewing. I don't think it really matters, but for the fact of I think it is important that we do have an understanding of what things are
Mhm.
so that we can honor those people who put a lot of work and effort into doing that. I mean, if you came up with something, higher journeys, right? And now all of a sudden, you've put all this work into it, all this time into it to make the higher journeys brand. But every time you come around on stage, somebody will call it like higher travel. She's in, you'd be like, yeah, kind of like, yeah, you are traveling or you have this, but I really like journey. That's why I stuck with that. So
Right.
you'd be like, "Can we keep that?" Because I actually thought an energy, an inspiration went into that name. Can we just keep that for what it is and then
Mhm.
keep this other thing for what it is
Mm.
and pay homage to both of them?
I love the way you put that. Well, it can get a little tricky in all these areas, Hakeem, because I think you've commented on this, that there is invariably this common thread that runs through all of these abilities or processes that can make things a bit blurry. I mean, I had a conversation with Richard Dolan's lovely wife, Tracy, who's also a very well researched and well practiced remote viewer. And we were having a conversation one day about the my not questioning, but really looking at how would we know if we're perceiving something. Bring in precognition as an example, something that I tend to have um, a lot of, particularly
Mhm.
when I was younger, but even now. But I've had what would be roughly called precogs, but later found out that they were happening about the same time that I was having the precog. Therefore, could that be called an involuntary remote view? Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Precognition is having a vision or some sense, usually a vision of something that's happening in our so-called future. But I've
mhm.
had several of those instances where I later found out that at the time that I was having this precog, it was occurring at the same time. And so
Yeah.
that spawned a conversation between Tracy and I as to how do we know if it's really precog, particularly if time is not linear? We could get into all of that. So, thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I would say, again, I don't know what the timeline is, and I think that um, if you were actually in that moment at that time, it could have been considered a remote viewing. However, remote viewing is about, based on, again, if we're talking about what it was created and designed to be,
Mhm.
um, Ingo named it remote viewing, and remote viewing came as a protocol or a process, a methodology of this is how you do this thing.
Understood.
Um, so when so technically, again, not to downplay this experience, but technically, if you're not following that methodology at that time, you're technically not remote viewing. You get what I'm
Yep.
saying? It's like,
I absolutely, I
you know,
100%. Well, the term target,
yes,
identifying a target, that in and of itself is revealing that
yes,
it's a protocol designed for you to do just that. So, first of all, mine was involuntary. So unless we
yes,
wanted to come up with another term
yeah,
altogether. But I think really the bigger question was, would this have been considered this one instance I'm thinking of a precog rather than some sort of a non-local um picking up on non-local information, real time. Maybe there's a whole other category for that. Who's to
yeah.
say?
If you were doing it real time and you were you would technically be bilocated. So
Mm,
if it was happening really close to the time that you were having it, you were located there, and where you were at the same time. That would be bilocation. Now, if it's even a minute or 5 minutes in advance of the
mhm,
event happening, then you were precogging through in with this bilocation event, right? So you were precognating this event, 5 minutes ahead or an hour ahead, but and you were there and you were at your
mm,
place at the same time. And what we know is that also, if you're doing that voluntarily, intention drives that, right? So my intent to go forward or backward in time, to an event, helps that. But you can without intent, you spontaneously end up there. And so one of the things that they had, like, Russell Targ and these guys did a remote viewing. I can't remember the remote viewer, but this person saw this. Oh, I think it was Pat Price. This person
mm,
saw this water, tower and area where they were looking at, and they gave him this coordinate. He ended up there. He drew these water towers. He drew this thing and all this stuff, and they finally unveiled the feedback, and it was like a swimming pool there, and there was no water towers. So they were like, man, this guy got it wrong. Well, Russell Targ ends up going on vacation. He's near this location. He decides to go there to visit it and check it out. And while he's there, he sees an old photo on the wall of that location many, 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 many years ago. And it was like a water treatment facility. So it had the tanks, and it had this pool like area and all this stuff. So then they said, whoa, he was right. We were just at the wrong time. So now they started adding in the process of being able to tell a person, give an intent, tell me what's happening at this target now,
mm.
because the
Okay.
brain will tend to jump timeline based on what it finds most interesting at that timeline, or maybe it just has a moment of inspiration, like it sounds like you had. You were just there, boom, it happened. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, this is going to happen. You look into it, you find out it really did happen. And so you had this moment of like insight, that was spontaneous. And so the brain or consciousness will happen. It will happen that way. So,
As I'm listening to this, I can't help but think, and I don't want to harp on it, but I have to. With the popularity of the telepathy tapes, which I'm
yeah,
now completely into. I just listened to episode 9 for the second time. Just I think that's my favorite. Um, the evidence is overwhelming. I know we're sounding like broken records that these abilities or these qualities are innate within all of humanity to an extent.
yeah,
Yet there is this vehement denial, vehement skepticism, almost like it's a culture in and of itself. I am just as perplexed or curious as to where this resistance to look at what we know damn well exists is coming from. I just like to get a thought on that, and then we'll leave that and move on. What are your thoughts on the why there is this incessant and vehement denial that these things exist when it's in your face? We are living at a time of great challenge and incredible opportunity. A time when taking life into our own hands, charting our own course, and finding our own answers is more accessible than ever before. During this time, you may be asking yourself, what am I called to do? What if I could discover not only my own inner healing power, but help others all over this planet discover theirs? We all have the ability to heal ourselves, but it takes a special approach, a unique approach. Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, also known as QHHT, a method developed by pioneering hypnotherapist and past life regression expert Dolores Cannon, is the approach that thousands have used and taught to access the deeper aspect of the self for healing at the core level. We all have the ability to tap into the higher self, the oversoul, the higher consciousness, and we have the means to help others to do the same. QHHT is designed to help the individual access the subconscious, the storehouse of all information, through visualization at the deepest level imaginable, a process that Dolores Cannon discovered and refined during her decades of working with individuals from around the globe. Training with QHHT will provide the guidance and give you the tools to help others tap that incredible force within. Now, you can access this exclusive training online, bringing the tools needed right to you so you can assist others in finding their own answers and achieve total healing. This is powerful and needed now more than ever. Be a part of the pioneering work and legacy of Dolores Cannon by learning QHHT. Start today by clicking on the link in the description of this show to get started. And when you do, don't forget to mention Higher Journeys to get a 10% course discount when you sign up. It's time we all take back control of our lives and chart the course for success at every level. It's time to discover the power of quantum healing hypnosis technique by helping others to help themselves. And by doing this, we are helping to heal the world.
Yeah, because on a deep level, human beings are pattern driven. This is like one of the tenets of PSYOP, and we're habit based. And so our reticular activating system really likes for there to be patterns and for us to recognize those patterns and make quick decisions subconsciously so we don't have to think deeply about things. When you start introducing new facts or new information that challenges the status quo, that challenges the way that we think, it throws that whole system off. And that's how we operate on a consistent basis daily. So now I have to think deeply and reconstruct the way I've been thinking about something for a long period of time that allowed me to exist this long. And so because because it may feel on some level, it goes against your ability to survive and thrive, we tend to resist it. And so some of us who are awakened, who are out there, who are in this space, who are saying, yes, we are open to the possibilities, we actually tend to be the outliers of the society. Majority of the society wants things to be very easy and very confined. And you tell me this and I'm here. And our society is like school, work, college, everything is like kind of based off of this patternizing.
Mm-hmm.
So now you start introducing, okay, there's something out there that may exist that I don't know about that changes everything. That's really threatening on a very deep level for people because it's something that they're not sure about. And we want certainty. A lot of us want certainty. And so I think that's where a lot of the resistance comes from, because now you have to acknowledge that there's this thing that all people can do, that we may not necessarily be able to control it, right? So when every invention that has come up in time has faced some level of resistance, the idea or theory or that people would posit. So this idea of us moving around the sun and the sun not moving around us, to speak it would get you killed at one point in time.
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
it challenged the status quo, and people were like, that's mind blowing. And it wasn't hurting anybody. But it was like
Literally
people,
mind blowing
yeah,
in terms
but
of the
people,
patterning and what the brain is used to,
exactly.
the habituation of the brain. Yeah.
Yes. And so people wanted to kill you for it. The
Yeah.
idea that there were these invisible germs floating around in there and they could get you sick and all of this was preposterous to people.
Oh,
They were
what was
ready to
that?
kill you,
What
you
was
know?
that? Give us
I think that was my thing. I don't know how to turn it off.
that was that woke us right up.
Yeah,
Okay.
well,
Yeah.
it was just the universe telling me, "Shit, you're right on."
Yeah, that's right.
It
Right
was
on
like,
time.
bing. Good statement.
Yeah.
Um, so, so each one of these things, people saying, "Oh, we can fly like birds." Ah, preposterous. You're crazy. These guys
True.
are ridiculous. It'll never happen. It's out of this world. So each person or group who has come with this type of knowledge that challenges where we are at that particular time and our fundamental reality, our understanding of our fundamental reality on a mass scale, has always had to face that kind of challenge. And I think, however, the intensity of that challenge is, or the resistance is, kind of gives us an idea that we're on the precipice
I
of
was just
being
gonna
able to break through,
Yeah,
right?
I was literally gonna use that word. I've been saying we're on the precipice for years, but I have never felt more that we're at that turning point, if you will, with all that's going on. Beautifully, beautifully said as usual. Again, I'm only gonna bring up the telepathy tapes one more time because it's to me, this is really I'll tell you why I'm so thrilled about the emergence of Kai Dickens and, as well as Dr. Hennessy Powell's work, that have put so much into this. Telepathy and associated, qualities is the word I'm gonna use, have been studied in earnest for decades and decades and decades. I think there's probably some that may not be too happy that the telepathy tapes has had the success that it's had because they were on the leading edge back then, but it wasn't time then. Now, and the way it's being presented as storytelling, it is so deeply personal,
Hmm.
and it is reaching. I have never seen between that and yes, I'm gonna bring up Jake Barber's psionics and the
Hmm.
and the conversation that's building and building around and the momentum, around not just his presence, but others like him. There's something is happening, Hakeem.
Hmm.
Something that I in all the years I've been in this field and doing this work, I have not seen before. We've been waiting for it. This is just the beginning of still a very long arc, I believe, but we're going up. We're starting to make that turn.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is could you see this becoming a mainstream discussion in our lifetimes, these sorts of things?
Well, if I have anything to do with it in the Psy Games, this is definitely going to be a mainstream
Well, that's what
discussion.
we're gonna talk about next.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
let's
mean, but
yeah.
but yeah, this telepathy tapes is blowing people's mind, and of course, it's gonna raise all types of questions, and people are gonna be uncomfortable about it. But I
Mhm,
mean, regardless of your religion, if you really spend time thinking about the things that have happened in your different faiths or philosophies about, space time or life or angels or spirits or stuff like that, these kind of things have been going on. It's just that normally sometimes in these religious groups, they attribute them to other things outside of me as a normal Joe, like, so I'm a normal Joe, but yeah, once upon a time people could do these things, but it was only select few, not
mhm.
everybody had those abilities. And I think that was a way to kind of keep people under control. Um, there's a perfect example of this. I want to relate to something just really bare bones that people can understand. There was a guy named Tokugawa who took over Japan, and one of the things that he did to keep people from uprising, because before him, Japan was in total turmoil. People were fighting all the time. You had warlords taking over different areas and controlling different spaces. And when he came into power, he did several things, but one of them that he did was super amazing for when we talk about a military strategy, was he shortened the handle of the sword, right? And
Hmm.
what he did by doing that was he took a whole warrior class and took away what they knew about how to fight with the main weapon at the time, which was the sword. Now everybody had to re-educate themselves on, like, how do we use a sword now, right? And so
Mhm.
they couldn't uprise, they couldn't fight effectively anymore, right? So I say that because maybe on some level, the way you gain control of a people who have this amazing God-given abilities is that you strip them of the thing that makes them most powerful. And so I use that because it's just very easy to understand that, hey, Everyone, all of the warriors at my time have grown up with this long sword and how to use that effectively on the battlefield. If I just make this one change and shorten that handle up, you still get to carry a sword for now. I'm just
Mhm.
shortening your handle. But then you're looking at it like, I don't even know how to do anything with this thing
Yeah.
because, and so now it just becomes an ornament. So if I shorten your ability to understand what your sword is capable of, your soul is capable of,
Mm.
then you're looking at this thing subconsciously and it's like, I don't even know how to really operate as a full human anymore. And so now we can kind of control the population. So whether that's true or not, or just my PSYOP conspiracy theory,
Oh, come on now. Let's just go there. I think this is, first of all, let me say this. Your analogy is spot on, and I'm gonna ask you, did you just get that as a download just now?
yes, I did. It
I
just
could
came.
I could tell. I could tell.
And I'm thinking as we're talking about it, I'm like, that is a, if we think about the sword cutting through um, things, and then we think about the soul being able to actually cut through what we think is just grounded reality into these different dimensions. Yeah, it does. It did. Yeah, that was pretty
Yeah.
magical.
I felt it.
Thank
I
you.
felt it. Yep. That's powerful stuff. No need to be shy, Hakeem. We know what's going on. I think
Yeah.
it's fairly clear. We can't prove it, but these I have always felt that, and I guess you could call me one of those outliers, like many in our audience, being open, not only open to it, but have uh, the experience of these sorts of things. That's how I became open to it, and had parents that nurtured it, by the way. But as I started to contemplate the resistance as I got older, and people not wanting to talk about, how could you not be interested in this? People have experiences all the time, but they're all too willing to shove it in a little box, never to see the light of day again, and they go on with their patterned lives. Love the way you explain that. And the only conclusion I could come up with after I started to contemplate where this vehement resistance is coming from is that we've been taught uh, uh, to keep our gifts atrophied, or more than that, that we don't even have them to begin with, only a
Hmm.
precious few. And that is, I think, part of a very old playbook, frankly. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty clear. Yeah, it's clear to see that if we were fully awakened as en masse to these abilities, there would be no power, or control grid
Yeah.
to be had. That's
Yeah.
pretty simple to me.
Yeah. And then we would, and information is king. And so what we're also seeing is that, the discussion about NHIs, and if we had those type of abilities, then you can't slap a secret badge on it and say that you can only get this type of information if you have this badge.
Yeah.
If people had this type of, if they were totally in tune with their multidimensional nature, then they would start having they would be able to get all types of information, which again, when we go back to remote viewing, a lot of people say that's probably why the government came out and said, yeah, remote viewing is, we found no value in it because we could not. Russell Targ just said this on one of his when I think he did an interview with Ross, or Russ. He was saying that when they couldn't figure out a way to defend against it. So if I can't figure out a way to defend against it, and any old Tom, Dick, and Harry can just bust into my safe of top secret files if they know how to do this well enough, the best way to do it from a PSYOP perspective is to just say, hey, we spent all this money doing this research, and I can tell you for a fact that it is not real. We're shutting it down.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the
There
back
you go.
room, we still got people doing it, as Jake Barber said, right? And we're still investing in it, but we're not investing in it in an open market anymore. So just because somebody says something goes away doesn't mean that it went away.
Just
And
like the drones.
yes. Yeah, just like the drones. Uh, they're not really, that was a funny couple. I mean, it's still going on, but that was during that height. That was a funny thing. It was like, no, they're drones. No, they're motherships. No, wait a minute. They're not motherships. They're plasmoids. Wait, they're plasmoids, drones, and motherships. No, wait, let's cut out the mothership.
And they're gone now, and
And they're gone.
nothing to see here. No matter
Yeah.
what we thought, they're not here anymore. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I had a question that was the remote viewing conversation is just fascinating. Oh, here's the question. In that regard,
Mhm.
Hakeem, do you believe the program is still going on within intelligence and military circles at some level?
Well, I definitely think that it's going on still. And what we do know is that I had this conversation before, and this person came out very clearly on a public show with millions of followers. So I feel confident to be able to talk about it now. But Skip Atwater went on Sean Ryan, and at
Mhm.
the end, he said there were 5 programs. And then he left it at that, and it was like the end of the show. So if you didn't watch the whole thing, you didn't get that. But I had that conversation with him, and he mentioned that same thing. So that's why I'm saying now I feel comfortable. I'm not breaking any code of ethics or anything, or with my friendship with him. Um, but there were these 5 things. So we know about one that got shut down.
That was with Hal Puthoff and
Yes.
Russell Targ and Ingo
Yeah. But
initially,
then
and
what
Joe
happened?
McMoneagle.
Yeah, so if there were 4 others that he knew about based on his secret, his clearance, what happened to those 4? We know that one of them was probably in the NSA. We don't know what happened to it. We don't know if it's still running or what happened. Nobody's talking about it. NSA is not talking about it. We know there might have been one deeper within the CIA or the DIA. Nobody's really talking about that. We know that when the CIA got the remote viewing program from the Army, because it was so open and wide, and the Army had to go every year and get more funding. So that meant that people knew about it. So if I wanted to do some really deep research and not have the oversight, and one of the things that the Army had ran into constantly was that you had fundamentalists of different religions who were on the who were in these different organizations or on the Senate or whatever, this committee, and they kept saying, "Oh no, this is evil," and da da da. And so you're fighting against that. You're fighting against budget restrictions. You're fighting. Why don't we just say this thing didn't work, shut it down, and then take the other 4 and just keep funneling Black project money into those?
Mm,
And now we don't even have to ask these guys, and we can go as deep and as far as we want without the oversight. So strategically, again, this is all me hypothetically brainstorming, which I have a little bit of background in, sitting in a room brainstorming how to persuade and change people's perceptions. Um, that it would make sense that that would be a good evolution if you really wanted to dive deep into what was capable here. Jessica Utz clearly stated when there was 2, they hired her and this other guy to kind of look into whether or not this remote viewing had any viable information. The other guy was a skeptic. He worked under the Amazing Randy, or he worked with the
mm,
Amazing
mm,
Randy. And that dude said, I can't really find anything wrong with the way they did these, but I still just don't really believe it. And then Jessica Utz was like, statistically, this is significant. And I've run the numbers. And she was the greatest in the world at that point, as far as one of the greatest in the world, as far as being a statistician was concerned. And she was like, no, this is legit. This research is legit. And as soon as the CIA got it, the day it got it, it shut it down. Boom, and
mm,
just claimed that, oh, well, we couldn't really figure out what was going on with it. But I think it was just covered. It was fodder. It was just like, hey, we're going to use this, shut it down, but we're going to keep it over here in these things, and we're going to do what we've always done, which is, you know, uh, filter money into it through some other means and get
mhm,
people and make it super secret, so we don't have the same level of oversight and continue to develop it. So long answer to a very short question, which is I definitely believe on some level it's still going on. And I think that it would be a mistake for us to believe that it's not.
mhm. Well, okay. I think that this has been kind of talked about before, that, the assumption that there's some measure or some other iteration perhaps of these sorts of things. And again, we tend to think, okay, you've got remote viewing over here, you've got the secret crash retrieval program going over here, you've got the psionics spin going on over here. again, there is a common thread that is throughout the all of this, and that is consciousness, our ability beyond the five physical senses to extract, to be able to both send and receive information and to interact with it. And our governments or military, I should say, and intelligence agencies know it, and they continue to work with it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I
So,
just I started describing this just recently again and through this a moment of inspiration. Because somebody was asking me about NHIs and consciousness and all this stuff. And I said, I think it's like the ocean. The consciousness is like the ocean. And these tools that we're using is like one person who's remote viewing is like the jet ski. So somebody's on the jet ski, but he's in the ocean or she's in the ocean. Another person's on a paddle board. They're in the ocean, right? But they're just experiencing it different. Another person's on a surfboard, right? They're in the ocean too, but they're experiencing it different. So the jet ski is like remote viewing, and clairvoyance or psionics might be like a paddleboard, and like the surfer might be like the mindsight person. So we're all in the same ocean, but we're all experiencing it a little bit different. And guess what else is in the ocean? These fish and dolphins. And if I'm on land, I probably don't really get that same experience. But if I'm out there, I might bump into a dolphin because it might find me interesting at that time. And that would be like the NHI, right? Or this fish, that comes and visits me. And that's like another type of NHI. And so you have all these people who are out there on the ocean having different experiences, but they are bumping into these things because they're out there. And that ocean to me is like consciousness, and these vehicles or tools that we use to navigate it are these different spaces that we find ourselves in, like mindsight, remote viewing, precognition, all this stuff.
what would be analogous to a banana boat on the ocean? I had to go there. I got an image of a banana boat. Don't answer that.
I don't even know.
I'm sure there's something there. Well, all of it is fascinating. Listen, I want to talk about the Psy Games. The Psy
Yay.
Games,
Yes.
a global arena for psychic development, if I have that right. A global
Yeah.
So much to say about that. This, you guys, wait till you hear about this. This is an event that Hakim got to download. I'm just going to tell. I know the story. You got to just like you got that download a few minutes ago. He gets them all the time. You got to download to do something that is uber important, and I want you to tell us what it's all about. We're going to be getting into remote viewing and precognition and dowsing and psychokinesis, telekinesis. Take it away. Tell us about the freaking awesome Psy Games coming up. I'm so excited. Go
Yeah.
for it.
So the side games is just that. So what we know about our humanness is that when we push ourselves, each other, to be greater, we end up finding we end up meeting new standards, new levels, higher levels. And so there's multiple layers to the side games. And one is I wanted to have a community around this topic of people from all over, not just this group over here doing their thing and this group of 20 over here doing their thing and this group of 100. No, let's make a world stage where everybody can get together who's like in the consciousness space, who is really doing this, but not just talking about it. Let's create a space where people do some stuff. We show what we have been working on and how well we have been doing that. And maybe what we can do is we can find some inspiration where I'm like, I didn't even think to do it like that, or I didn't even think that was possible. And now I'm inspired to try to use and tap into my psychic ability to take it to the next level. So it was about community, inspiration, collaboration. Now if I find somebody who I resonate with, who's talking about this particular field, now I can collaborate with them and grow with them. Or maybe I have a piece of the puzzle and I didn't realize they had a piece of puzzle. Now we can bring those puzzles together and see where we go from there. My other aspect of this was that I see when I go to these different events that there's a major gap between the age groups of the people that are there. Normally I see a plethora of 40, 50, 60s and above. very, very, it's more now, I think, than probably in the past. But you got some 20-year-olds running around and doing some stuff like that. Definitely no kids. I mean, at one event I went to a couple months ago, there were like 3 kids there, but, that was I heard the event had like 5,000 people. So,
Mm,
me walking, and maybe that's just I only saw 3 kids, and that was just my perspective. Maybe there were more, but there definitely wasn't enough like, make a wave, and I was looking for children. So then where are the children at? Well, the children are playing video games, they're doing things that, that are fun to them. And so gamifying like this event and having a place where people could have fun and they have some community meets children where they're at, you know, and
mhm,
says, hey, you could, I know you have this ability, you can have fun with that. And probably a lot of people listening to this will have had this experience. They were young, they had psychic abilities, they were able to tap into things, and either their family said, that's not okay, that's bogus, that's evil, or whatever. They had one of those experiences. Or maybe the family did support it, but then they go out into the community and the community says, that's silly, that's bogus, that's not okay. So then they shut it down.
mm,
And then sometime in their 30s or 40s, they have an epiphany or an awakening and they say, I used to be able to do that when I was a kid.
mm.
And I shut it off. And then you hear the story. I'm sure, Alexis, you've heard this story so many times. You're talking to somebody and they say, I used to be able to do this when I was young.
Yeah.
And I shut it down because of my family, or I shut it down because of my community, or I didn't see a use for it. And then you also hear, I wish I never stopped. I wish I just explored it. I
Mm,
hear that so many times from people. So then, well, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that we don't have communities that really cater or have or welcome young people or make it fun for young people or this, that, and the other. And so, how do we build communities that support that? And so, we can start getting 10-year-olds to come to events like these and have a lot of fun. Then they grow up at events like these, and now they become 20 and 30-year-olds. They have children, and then they bring their children to that, and they have fun, and then they have children, and now we not only hopefully erase this gap, but we also build a community where these are not just known about, but they're accepted as normal, and they are um, uh, supported to grow into new levels. Like we would
mhm.
see, oh, my child can jump really high. Let me put them in basketball, and let me start supporting that. Oh, they're doing really good at basketball. Okay, let me send them to a basketball camp. Wow, they did really good at the basketball camp. Maybe they can go to compete at state or at college level,
That's
and
the trajectory, right? Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
so we see that in these other things, but we don't see it in this stuff, which is probably the most important because it's going to have the
Is
most long-term impact on their multidimensional nature and creating the types of individuals that we all want to be around,
mhm,
and that are loving and caring and resonant, and they are able to do things that they're empathic, and they can do all this stuff. And those are the individuals versus the individuals who are like, um my teacher says this, and my yoga teacher says this. He says, um a person who comes to yoga and learns how to meditate, who doesn't want to really change, let's say if they are an asshole, they could just become a very focused asshole, right? So, like yoga will help them with their focus, and
right.
if they're not trying to like really dive into who they are and change that, then they just become more of who they are, but just a focused version of that.
Mhm,
And he said, if and people tend to find the dysfunction that they are comfortable in. So you might have the high-powered CEO driving in their super fast convertible with the top down, drinking their triple shot of espresso, yelling at somebody on the phone on their way to their power yoga class, right? And then when they talk to people, they say, "Well, I'm enlightened. I trained in that yoga stuff. I know what that is."
yeah.
And it's really like, no,
Happening.
you just found the yoga that suits you.
Right.
But what about finding groups and changing in a way that really, or finding groups that help you grow, and then also look at introspectively who you are. And my tricky thing to the Psy Games is that if I can inspire a child or an adult to have fun with this, and if we can inspire them to push the limits. Oh man, Alexis got up there and she said there were 10 things she had to remote view and she got them all on the spot. I didn't even know that was possible. The
Hmm.
circles I've been running in, we'd be lucky to hit 3. I go home, I say, well, how do I get better at this? Well, I got to spend time in the matrix. I got to spend time in the cool down, get my meditation on. I'm inspired now to go home and do more of that. And in doing more of that, hopefully the work is done. The deeper work starts to get done because we know from a lot of the sages and these different spiritual and religious beliefs, they say, hey, the more time you spend reflecting and meditation with the proper intention, you will start to clear up all of the blocks. And then these things will start to happen. You'll start getting more connected. You'll sense things about people. You'll sense things about the world. You'll feel things about your own self before you even knew. And so, man, wouldn't it be exciting to have an event that inspires people to do more of that? And
And this is
then in the process, they become maybe the type of people that NHI would love to communicate with.
ah, there you go. You left it to the very end. Aha. Tell us what's happening in terms of give us a set the stage for us of the individuals that are going to be participating. Y'all, you will know some of these names. Hakeem Scott and his team have procured a amazing lineup, not the least of which is Paul Smith, who you talked about, and Jeffrey Mishlove. And I'll just give you the list. Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, who is integral in the telepathy tapes project, will also be there. What will Diane be doing? What will Dr. Diane be doing there? Just as an example.
Yeah, so Dr. Powell will be talking about these autistic savants that she studied, and autistic savant syndrome, I believe it's called,
Mhm.
where people, or not autistic, but savant syndrome, where people like hit their head, wake up from a
Oh,
coma or something, and now all of a sudden they have skills and information they never had before.
mhm,
So what does that mean? Where's that information coming from? Um, and so maybe there is this field of information that's out there that we are able to tap into on some level. And when we have these traumatic experiences like bumping our head or getting, passing out or something, or getting a disease that we barely we it doesn't look like we're going to recover from, but then we do, and now we have this information is out there in the field. So she's going to be talking about her research on that
I love it.
and all of the studies and the people that she's come across over time that have had these abilities, and and what she's found that is the common thread in all of those. So
Mhm.
very interesting. So if you're looking for not somebody who said, I feel this way, but somebody who's like, I saw this and I did real research that any scientist who looks at this can respect because I followed the research rigor.
Mhm.
Um, if you're looking for more of that, then we have that.
You
If
have
you're looking
that.
for people who are more intuitive, we have them too.
Mhm. Well, you'll have keynotes as well as the practice, and you're billing it somewhat as a competition. I know you had a conversation with Jeff Mishlove about that, and a term came to mind. I don't know if you've heard before that I think would be so apt for what you're trying to
Mhm.
put out there. Not competition, but co-opetition.
Co-opetition. I like
Write
that.
that down. Co-opetition. That's a term that's been used in business where you're typically looked at as competitors, but you're coming together in a cooperative manner. And I think
Mhm.
that's what you've achieved beautifully. We're going to get to see that play out. So there will be in kind of a competitive environment, but a fun one where people will be trying. Let's see if I can get all 5. We've got pendulum dowsing, you guys, which I
Yeah.
love. Psychokinesis, mind sight, which I want to touch on before we go, precognition, and remote viewing. Did I get all 5?
You got all 5.
All right, cool. All of that is going to be not just discussed, but done and taught, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing the promotion for you, man. Come on. It's so exciting, and we're in post, we're gonna put some images up of the website so you can see, jump on board. This is for everyone. I'm glad you talked about the kids because we wanna see more children at these events, but it's a family affair, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is a family affair. We want the whole family to be there. We want to have a lot of fun. We want kids to be running around and doing stuff, and we're going to have a lot of things that are just going to be great for them to experience. But then also, we want adults and family and elders to be there and learning this information as well.
Mhm. Give us some of the other people that are gonna be there.
So we got, one of my close friend, Chris Bledsoe is going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Chris has been having for a long time these experiences where, he's been interacting with orbs in non-human intelligences, and he's also able to call them in. So he's able to invite them to come, and then they will show up. And so
Mhm,
he's been being researched by all of the big names, the alphabet soup, we call it, right?
mhm,
And how is he able to do this? So he's going to be there talking about his experiences and talking about his knowledge and awareness. We have Danny Sheehan, who I thought it was important to have him there because he looks at things from a legal side, right?
mhm,
How do we do proper disclosure of UAPs and NHIs, and what does the government really know, and what level of that should be shared with the American population? Because right now they're like trying to hide everything. But what
mhm,
about, besides the things that would cause, issues or harm to our national security, what about bringing forth the things that won't? And how do we do that in a responsible way? So he's been around for a really long time. He's worked with Ingo Swann and, all these different groups and people over the years, so he has valuable insight. We
mhm,
have Chris Ramsey, who is a illusionist and magician turned remote viewer, and doing a lot of these esoteric practices. I love Chris's perspective because one of the things that I brought up to him, and when we had a conversation, was that if you look at in the Bible the story of Moses, where he's trying to show to Pharaoh the power of God, and he taps his cane and throws it down, it turns into a snake. And then the Pharaoh says, "Well, my magicians can do that too." And he has his guys come out, and they tap their thing and they throw it down and it becomes a snake too. And so I was telling him in that conversation, I was like, it doesn't mean that because illusionist magic is real, that real magic is not real. And it doesn't mean that if real magic is real, that illusionist magic. In that example, they both coexisted, right?
mm,
And so, the illusionists are like, oh, the mentalists are like, oh, it's all BS. It's not real.
right.
I can put on a mask and tell you about the cards too. Okay, great. That's real, but it doesn't negate the fact that there are also people who could put on masks, not use their sight, and still see it. And instead of us trying to live in a world where we prove one is fake and the other is real, why don't we just acknowledge that they're both real?
They're
And
both
and we have these old ancient stories that kind of highlight that as well, like the story of Moses. So what would that look like? Anyway, we got Chris Ramsey being there, right? I digress.
oh, all of these things, we could just go
Yeah,
down
I'm
rabbit
just I'm
holes,
just
yeah.
so passionate about it. We even have DOPS. DOPS is the Department of Perceptual Studies out of University of Virginia. We have three scientists coming from there, who that department has been one of the longest running departments in a university that has been researching paranormal or parapsychology for many, many years. And so we have scientists coming there. They will be speaking. They will also be helping with the games. We have mindsight people. We have people that I worked with out in Utah, Viber Vision. We got a guy named Mike Zalesnik, and he will be coming, and they integrate very well breath work, movement, and these energies to help
Mm,
you bring on this Viber vision, they call it, or this mind sight. Then on top of that, we have, excuse me, Nicola Pharma from the UK. You could have seen her on the Superhuman video or movie that came out. where she teaches kids how to see without their sight. I went to her. I trained with her. I have a certificate from her program to be. I'm an instructor.
For
So
mindsight.
for mindsight, yeah, under her as well as I'm not a instructor. They're very selective about who they make instructors, but I've gone through all of the Viber Vision courses. They have 3 courses, and I've done level 1 twice, level 2 twice, and then level 3 once. And so I've trained with them as well, and several other people too in mindsight. We have Wendy Gallant, who teaches mindsight, that I trained with as well. She has a group. We have so many people, like you said, Jeffrey Mishlove, Paul Smith. We got Tom Campbell, who is a
Yes,
pioneer
my
in the
big
space.
toe.
Yeah, My Big Toe. He talks about the theory of everything, of how all of these things weave together, and how they can all, how they all support each other, and on these different levels. So we have him as well. I mean, it's just, we got Sean McNamara, who's in the space doing mindsight as well as PK, precognition, or psychokinesis. He's going to be there. He's going to be talking about that and teaching those. We have you. We have Jimmy Church, who's going to be the MC. So a lot of people know Jimmy Church in this space. So the list of people just goes on
All-star
and on.
cast. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna be
all-star cast. We got great commentators like yourself coming, and and people who know this field, who can speak about it very highly intelligently, and explain to people what's happening when they're watching somebody do one of the events.
yeah.
This is why or how they're doing this mindsight. This is, and you can talk about it from your own experience. So we have
Mhm.
people who are going to be there talking about these things.
I'm looking forward to it. It's August 1st through the 3rd
Mhm.
in Charlottesville, Virginia. Of course, we'll have a link. I even know the link. It's www. Uh, PsyGamesInternational.com.
Yeah, and Psy spelled PSI.
Yes, PSI.
PsyGamesInternational.com. And
That's
you also have a discount code. So if you put that in the video, they get 20% off if they
I will
sign
put
up
that
with
in
that
the video
discount.
for sure. Make sure you check it out, y'all. And by the way, the website is beautiful. Tons of information, everything you could want, and the eye candy is great. So make sure to go there. We're winding down, man. I'm looking at this clock going, are you kidding me? We're going to go to the Patreon after show, journeyers, right? But guess what we're going to do over there? This time, we're going to have, how could we not? We're going to continue to not just talk about remote viewing, we're going to have a little demonstration or couple little tips, something, right? Little
Yeah,
drop
yeah.
there
Little drop.
for people that are interested. So if you haven't joined on and joined in with the Higher Journeys community over there, please do so. This would be a great time to come on over and support Higher Journeys as well. But we're not going to go yet. We keep talking about this mind sight, or blind sight. I think it has been referred to,
Mhm.
which you're the one that's kind of acclimated me to that term. I'm somewhat familiar with what it entails, but this is fascinating. And I had gone to your website, Hakeem, just yesterday or the day before, and found a little video of a mini documentary where a group of kids in the UK practiced mindsight
Mhm.
incredibly. And I wanted to just talk about that for a bit. Wanted for the audience that doesn't know the term, why don't you go ahead very briefly, again, explain what it entails, but I'm gonna tag on another question, with that. It's said that individuals between the ages of, what, 6 and 12 are the most, apt to pick up the skill, if you will, unless
Yeah.
they're born with it. My question is, for adults that want to learn it, are is it too late, or, and why? Why is it, just for not just for, but
Yeah. So
kids?
this is a funny dynamic, because in the martial arts, what you have is you have a lot of people want to teach adults, and they don't want to teach kids, because they're like, kids don't understand what it's like to have to defend themselves and blah blah blah. So they're like, and they don't understand the concepts I'm trying to teach about this. So in the martial arts world, although you have some schools that know that kids are, the bread and butter, that's what you want to work with. There's a lot
Mhm.
of very high level martial arts schools who are traditional, they call themselves, and they won't teach kids. They're like, no, we don't do it. It's just too hard to get them to understand these concepts.
Hmm.
In this space, it's the exact opposite. Right? So, oh no, the kids, because they aren't tied up in all this philosophical, logic craziness, they just do. I want to do it. Let's go. I'm excited. I want to have fun. I want to do it. I want to explore. And so they just accept and they go with. And so, what happens is quite often you'll find those teachers who say, we don't want to teach adults because the adults are too wrapped up in the logic brain, that left brain, and dealing with all of the day-to-day stressors and stuff like that, and it's just too hard, so it takes a lot more time. So you have to have a more dedicated, not only student but an instructor who's willing to put forth the effort, as long as the student's willing to put forth the effort to really break through, because there's so much more crap that
Mm,
happens that's inside an adult's mind than there is in a child's mind.
indeed.
Also, the child is coming from that spiritual realm and hasn't been indoctrinated as much into the gross realm. They're still learning about the gross realm at that age. And so they're a lot more into the subtle stage, the subtle realm, than they are in the gross. And so it makes it a lot easier for them. So
Mhm.
mindsight, and the gist of it, there's other terms for it. Like I said, there's my friend's vibrovision, there's extraocular. If you look up
That's such
papers on, yeah, if you look up on papers on it, you might find in the National Institute of Health, they have some papers on their site called extraocular vision, where they did some research on this as well. So that would probably be the most scientific term that you would find in a paper. But mindsight is the same thing. It's you not using your actual visual eyes, your eyes, to see visually what's happening around you, but you're using some other mechanism to see these things. Now, I've heard people say it's your higher self that is above you seeing what's happening. I've heard people say that it's your pineal gland because it has photoreceptors, and those photoreceptors um, are somehow interpreting information through another sense and then turning that into images. The vibrovision people would say that's because it's vibration. Just because if you're looking through your eyes, like I'm looking at you right now, and you're hearing me, it's all vibration. It's
right.
all frequencies, and your eye is seeing me and that vibration, and then it's your brain's turning it into an image, and then you're
Absolutely.
relating that image. So all that's happening, it's just vibration. So if I take your eyes away, then maybe there's, according to these other modalities, there's ways that your body can pick up on those vibrations. And then we're now training your body to interpret those vibrations, through another sense, but the same way. So I can still tell it's you, even though I can't see you. And
Mhm.
I talked to Bob Holbrook from the Monroe Institute last night, and he was talking about a guy who was blind, who climbed this really dangerous mountain, and he was using the echolocation. He was making these sounds with his mouth, and when they did a study on him and put brain sensors on, even though he wasn't seeing, when he would get this feedback of this echolocation, the portion of his brain that would light up if you were actually seeing stuff
Mhm.
was lighting up. So he's using the same visual cortex to see his environment, but through sound.
Oh my gosh.
So it means that the waves, the frequencies that bounce back to you could either come through your ears and still hit your visual cortex centers and make them light up, or it could come through your eyes. But your body is capable, we as these multidimensional beings are capable of taking that same information and interpreting it, and in a different way, even though it's coming through a different sense. So that is proven, and that is something that people can
Proven.
hang on if they need some science behind it. If they're just like, oh, I don't, believe this. Okay, well, if this guy can make these sounds, and sound is vibration, just like you know, you seeing something is vibratory,
Absolutely.
then it does lead you to believe that this is possible in this way. So there are different people who say different things about what's possible or what they are, but ultimately we know that people can do it.
I
So
just like to practice it. I'm not gonna get into the weeds. I
yeah.
noticed the kids in the little documentary that you have on your site were
Mhm.
wearing a particular kind of, it had a logo on it. I'm gonna link it because I think they're available. I think at, like, Walmart, certainly Amazon. What are
Yeah.
the not goggles, but the blindfolds that they were wearing where it literally blocks everything? Because what they were practicing, these little kids, you guys, were essentially reading from a book with the blindfolds on. And we've
Yeah.
seen this before. Caroline Corey's also done some great work in
Hmm.
her documentary film Superhuman, where
Yep.
she demonstrated those kids. But do you know what I'm talking about? The goggles that
Yes.
they
It's
were,
called the
the
Mind
goggles,
Fold.
the mindfold,
Yes.
I'm going to link that, you guys,
And that's
if
on
you're interested.
Amazon. You can find them. Yeah.
Yep, I'll put a link to it. Here was a question I had. I wonder, I mean, I'm sure they've got, I don't think Amazon carries them just for mindsight, but just for relaxation, meditation. Wouldn't they be good for that, you think?
Yeah, actually, I do that. I'll bring. I have multiple ones. I travel with them, and what I'll do is I'll go out in the sun and I'll put on my mindfold, and that way it blocks out my visual senses and it allows me to kind of like see the world in a new way. Like I still have light come not come through the mindfold. I'll have my eyes closed, but I can perceive and I feel, light all around me. And it just allows me to get out of trying to use my eyes and
Interesting.
do it.
So
So I
it could,
use it for meditation as well.
okay. I'm getting them right now. I'm ordering them as soon as we hang up. Yes, and I'll put a link. I'll make sure you guys have a link. Oh my gosh, so much. And listen, you're a busy man. I want everyone to go to the Psy Games International for sure, but you're also going to be speaking along with yours truly at Contact in the Desert coming
Yes.
up.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. That's a biggie. That'll be right before the Psy Games. And
Yes.
then you're also going to be speaking at Jim Garrison's second Psionic Summit coming up, correct?
Yes. This upcoming Sunday.
This upcoming Sunday. Oh,
Yes.
wow. That's gonna
Yeah.
be exciting. His first one was great. So, you're a busy man. Anything else we need to know? We obviously,
Yeah. I'll
you'll be
be at
joining.
Contact Modalities Expo at the beginning of May, and that's in Wisconsin. So I'll be there as well. And those are some of the things that I'll be speaking at and doing things. And then other than that, the side games, I'm really focused on that. We have put together a really amazing newsletter for the side games. I've written music for the side games. For a side games album, and we will be releasing some of those songs for free, but you can buy the album at the games if you want. There's 5 songs we'll release free, and then 5 that we'll have in reserve for people who want to get the album support. And so sign up at our newsletter and you'll get free music. You'll get blogs about this stuff. You'll get interviews like you and I are going to do an interview for the Side Games talks where we interview all of the different speakers and different people involved. So that'll be coming to you. So it'll be all this type of information. There's a lot
Mm,
of value there. So I
a
would I
lot of
would
value.
definitely have people do that. And then somewhere in the midst of this, I'm going to be launching my own website called Greater Potentials. Right now, I have the Hakim-Isler.com, but that's more of my survival and outdoor work, and it hits a little bit on my consciousness work. But Greater Potentials will be the where I go, from this point on. So that'll be my own personal brand, and the Side Games will be my universal brand for all people all over the world. So
Whew.
yeah.
I'm tired just listening. And may I add, proud papa. He's a new daddy too. I definitely don't know how
Yes.
you're getting all this in with that beautiful baby you got. Is she sleeping yet through the night?
Yeah, actually the other night slept for, I wanna say, what was it? 12 hours or
Oh
something,
my
10 or
goodness.
12 hours. Yeah, I just wanna be a
Oh, maybe I'll be, oh, okay. Proud papa
Brad
indeed.
Papa.
I
Yeah,
love it.
that's
I
my little
love it.
baby.
See, she's already she just left there, so she's tuned in and knows she needs to sleep to give you a break so you can carry on with your beautiful work that you're doing, my
Yeah,
friend. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, once again, this has just been a joy, and I know that the folks are going to love it to the point where they want to have you come back. So I'm going to put this out as a formal invitation. Please come
y
back and talk about more
yes,
of this great stuff because this is such an important time. And as I said off air, you are so necessary, and I mean that with all of my heart. So
thank
thank
you.
you, Hakeem. We're going to go next door. Don't hang up. I'm gonna sign off with the journeyers for now, but we're gonna go over here. If do you want to learn about remote viewing? Do you wanna? I do. So come on over, support Higher Journeys, get all these great perks. I think we're up to like 100 and almost maybe 15 after shows at this point. So all that content's available, y'all. So come on over and we'll start with a little remote viewing class. I won't call it a class, but it'll be a goodie for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, again, thank you, my dear, for being a part of this family, and welcome to Higher Journeys. Welcome to the Higher Journeys family. You are now an official journeyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as always, we thank you, everyone. Mwah, this kiss is for everyone out there. So appreciate you, your support, and your thirst for knowledge, the good kind of knowledge. So, as always, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you next time. Take care now.